choyo sambo pa gyu trashi pa tuche tempe chinle yar ngoda pelge drolora zambe zebrachi pande lame shabla solwade Homo a guru vajradara suma timonishas Uta vardani shri badra varsa manya sarva siddhi hum Om Guru Vajra Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dar Karma Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munishas Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munishas Uta Vardani Shri Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munishas Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munishas Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Manishas Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Manish Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke kudan dagi lu pakyuke sundan dagi pakyute tudan dagi tön yerme çıktı çingi lu pakyuke ku dagi lu pakyuke sundan dagi Tudan dagi tön yerme çıktı cingelu Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Svoha Sashipu ki choshi me to tramare rabalingashi ni de gempadi sangye shinto mikte ulwarki Drokunam da shingla chopar shoyidam guru ratna mindrala kamniryata yami Sangye chodan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo danik Dage chushe gibe sonam ki Drola pinchra sangye drupar sho sangye Chedan soge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsochi Chinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchra sangye drupar sho sangye Chedan soge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsochi Dagi chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchra sangye druparsho. Nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nel Sangha prendo rifugio fino all'illuminazione. Con la pratica della generosità e delle altre perfezioni possa io ottenere lo stato di Buddha per il beneficio di tutti gli esseri senzienti. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge into enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Namo yal haye ke da ludan ne jinke rubundan da mi ke nam dan rowa kunge tanam chi sampa tamche ke to dagi cheten to tamche ke to dagi cheten.
Let's imagine photography. When we see a picture, a photo, what is represented there other than the object pictured there? There is the position of the subject, of the photographer. There is the camera that has been used, the lens that has been chosen, the configuration, the settings, the perspective from which the photographer took the picture. So looking at a picture, other than seeing the subject, the object photographed, pictured, then we can also see much information also about the photographer. So we could say that a picture is not made just by the photographed object, but also from the photographer. And when we perceive anything, when we go to a place, meet a person, see something, hear something, and so on, we are somehow the creators of our own reality. And so the light that comes to my eyes, it's there. The object that I see, it's there. The sound that comes to my ear is there. But how I live it depends on me. And this partly is somehow like the frustration of the artists, like a bit generalizing, which is not the best, but I've already seen it happen that like an artist creates like something like it has like a profundity of meaning, and then he shows it to someone else, and the other doesn't see it. How can you not see it? It's there. But where is that meaning? Is it in the artist's work, that creation, or is it in the whole? When we look at a movie, we are part of the creation of the movie. The movie that I watch and that everyone watches is different because we look through ourselves. So when we perceive something, our tendency very often is to have the sensation that we are perceiving the object, the situation, the person, the sound, and so forth. Also, in this moment, if I ring the bell, if I play the bell, the feeling that we have is that we are listening to that sound, and that we are all listening to the same sound. When in reality, it's not like that. Why? Because the sound that I hear is a bit different from what everyone hears. We have a different hearing, we have a different attributed value, different feelings, different perception. And this is the fact due to the fact that when we live experiences, very often we put the weight on the object that is being lived in the experience and not on the subject that is living it. the way with which I live an experience changes completely the experience itself. The same situation could be lived in an infinity of different ways. And this is very important because it has a difference of value that is huge. And it's from here that comes this part that we were looking at before this morning. Didn't find the part of the text right away, but now I found it. Now I lost it again.
Dove sei finito? Quando uno ha la certezza di qualcosa.
When one has the certainty of something.
Quello di cui stiamo parlando oggi
What we are talking about today is the mode with which we go and listen to the teachings. We have seen the four main fundamental points of the Lam Rim. Where are these teachings starting from? So the qualities of the who transmitted them, the qualities of the teaching themselves, and then we have the mode, the correct mode of listening. Here we are. So we have the correct mode of listening. Why does the mode of listening change? Because I can say the same words with the same intention, and each one will receive something different. And it's very important for ourselves when we read a book, when we listen to someone, the mode with which we pose ourselves, that changes completely the perspective of receiving. The interesting thing and very important, and it's one of the foundations of Buddhism, is that many of our attitudes, even if ideally it would be better if they would be spontaneous, even when they are not spontaneous, it's possible to generate them and they have a benefit. A bit like when, a bit jokingly, I said it's better to be an artificial altruistic than a natural selfish. Artificial doesn't mean fake, it means that it doesn't become spontaneous and I need to put some effort. It's better to listen in a way that it's aware artificially than rather being spontaneously thinking about 1,000 other things as you're there. So there is an effort of directioning our attitude, our thoughts, our behavior, the way with which we do something. And this is a part that very often we don't take into account. Very often we imagine that what is worth is what I'm doing, where I am, what is being said, and that's what counts. But I was there, I was at the teachings. What does it matter? How were you there? With what attitude were you there? I was there in front of that person with what internal attitude? Because that changes everything. The fact that, for example, being there to listen to the Dharma teachings is not something that necessarily is good. Depends on how I do it. Because if I go to a teaching and as I'm there, I'm thinking, but look at that person, how many stupid things he's saying. If I have an attitude of arrogance, opposition, conflict, criticism, and so on, probably I do more damage to myself than benefit. So it's doesn't depend on the context, but it depends on the way with which we do it. And this remembers me a bit the story of this master. He was a meditator, practitioner, very serious. Unfortunately, I don't remember the name because I didn't apprehend it well as I was listening to the story. I was in Nepal having dinner with two Nepali friends and monk friends, and one of them tells me this story that was the story of a master of a friend close to him. And this person came to Tibet in the 60s, more or less. It was in the north of India, in a place called Buxa, where Tibetans, when they have left Tibet in the 59, many Tibetans, the Indian government directioned all those that wanted to follow a monastic life to a place that was this ex-prison of the English men, and they put them all there. It was a place in the middle of nowhere. One day, this master decided to leave the community to go and meditate in the mountains in solitude. There were some disciples going there every 3 months to bring some food, to bring some flour, to see if everything was alright. And one day they go there to meet him, and they don't find him. His sort of cave hut in the mountains was basically abandoned, but it was as if he had gone out for a walk and never came back. And they thought that he may have been killed from some wild animal, like some snakes or tigers, like dangerous animals that were around there. It was like part of the daily life also to have to deal with these dangerous animals. And so here in the mountains, maybe he went to catch some, collect water, and he died. So they went back and did all the ceremonies for death, and did like a process of and 2 years later he comes back and he tells the story of what happened. And actually, yeah, he went to collect water, wood, whatever, and he gets caught by some military people, and they believe that he was like a spy of the secret services of Pakistan in a time of conflict between Pakistan and India. They took him, they brought him to their barrack. Definitely they weren't very kind with him, but he didn't speak a word of English or Hindi. He only spoke a dialect of Tibet, of the region of Kham. Fortunately, the people from Kham are tough on. It's like a Wild West region. Even now, Kham, they have like some kind of cowboy hats. They have like really big boots. They don't go around with swords because it's forbidden. But until a long while ago, they went around with swords and guns and so on, and it was normal. And even now, it's some people that are very direct, and if there is a conflict, probably before you hear before the fist than the word. So they're very tough people. And he was from this region. He didn't speak any language that you could understand, that the military people could understand, and they put him into prison. And he found himself in this cell. They would give him food twice a day. He was protected by rain. He looked around and he was like, okay, but you know what? It's actually better than the cave where I was in. I don't even have to cook. I don't have to collect water. I have much more time to meditate. How beautiful. And so he sat there to meditate, and he remained in meditation for those 14 hours a day, if not more. It was in India, where exists a spiritual culture where these things are contemplated. And definitely, also because of this, the guards developed a certain respect towards him. And 1 year later, the bureaucratic process ended, and they opened the cell and told him, you can go. And he said, no, I haven't finished completing my retreat. And they weren't able to talk to each other. They forced him outside the cell and they push him out, and he runs back in until after different trials of this pushing out, they found a place for him that was inside of the barrack, the station. There was like a cell. There was some silence there, and where he could live whenever he wanted. And he remained there for at least 1 year more. And one day when he finished his retreat, he thanked and he went back. And this story has many points of reflection, and one of those is, for him, the fundamental point was not where he was, but how he placed himself in front of the situation where he was. I remember also in a book about the story of prime numbers of math. It was like one of the important mathematicians that um, that elaborated an important theory. It was against war during the Second World War probably, and he was put into prison. And after that, he said that it was one of the greatest blessings for him because he said, okay, in prison I had nothing else to do other than working on my um, on a theorem. If I had to remain at home, having to manage my children, having to get a job, I would have never worked on this theorem and done what I've done. And what I want to say is that when we find ourselves in whatever situation, one of the things that makes a huge difference is the way that we put ourselves, the perspective from which we look at what we are looking. It changes completely. And so, for this, when we go and listen to the Dharma, it's important, but not only to listen to the Dharma, many things, but in this specific case, it's important to breathe a bit, review, check ourselves with what attitude have I stepped in. If you look, for example, in the main door of the temple, that for practical reason we are mostly using the side door rather than the front door. There, the outside, the floor is white in the middle, because in the temples in the middle, it's at the entrance, it's placed the white in order to remember us to enter with a clean mind, to clean away the arrogance, the prejudice, and so on. And so it's important for us to remember what have I come here to do, why am I here, and with what attitude am I going to listen. And here we have these three attitudes, these two attitudes, the first with 3 and the second with 6, that are described, that are part of the way with it's important to remember about the preciousness of Dharma, the preciousness of listening, the importance of being able to treat with respect the Dharma and who transmits the Dharma. Personally, I had to, how can I say, this is something very personal, but I had to find the right balance in myself to make peace somehow with the fact that personally the place that I like the most is sitting on the floor. For me, to be in a position where I become sort of adulated, I'm quite allergic actually. But on the other hand, by the moment you're representing something, then it's important. If I look at my masters, it's important for me to treat them with respect, to have this relationship for the value that it's been given to what it's received. And so somehow the fact that before giving the teachings, I do the prostration because I respect what I go and represent. Before stepping up, I snap the fingers to remember the fact that I am impermanent and I will die, and I can't stay attached to power and everything, and I have to go back to the meditation, to the motivation, why I'm here. So all of these are aspects to remember the reason why we do all that we do. So the fact of the respect is not about hierarchy, institution, it's not a matter of a person because that person is important. For example, in the teachings, there is a teaching that is called the 50 verses of devotion to the Guru that explains step by step what is the correct way of relating with the spiritual guide with respect. In no moment there is a point where you should respect someone because it has like an institutional role, like a position, a name, a title. What happens is that when someone transmits something, then in order to have myself along my path, it's important for me to have respect towards who is transmitting. Because when I have that respect, then naturally I give more value to what I receive. And then there is the third, which is the correct mode of listening. And then we saw before abandoning the three defective vessels, so not upturned, not stained, and to try to close the holes. And this is something that needs to be done with a certain frequency. Also, especially to close the holes and to clean sometimes inside. The second attitude is to remember that I am here for me, for myself. I'm not here because I want to belong to something, even if it's beautiful to belong and all of that, but because I want to face my shadows, I want to grow internally, also to be at the service of others. But I need to put myself out of the comfort zone. And it's an intimate process, very deep. And one of the first thing that it requires is the courage to look at oneself in the eyes and to get involved. Because if I have the awareness, I am the patient, that means that I need to make peace with something. It's not a matter of how many mental defilements I have and this and that. It's not that. It's the attitude of looking at oneself and to say, I need to take care of myself and I'm here for that. Also to be at the service of others, but first of all I need to take care and have the courage and the love and the affection of looking at myself in the eyes and to take care of myself. With this, I have the awareness that who is teaching is not someone to whom I give trust and I take their responsibility away from me, but it's someone that is showing me a path that I need to walk, and that the teachings are the map that it's showing me the path, but that then I have to walk. I see who transmits the Dharma as a Buddha because through who I have in front I connect to the Buddha. There is like a line, and I see the importance also that this knowledge that we call Dharma, that remains alive from generation to generation. Because I open and close a quick parenthesis, I have the feeling that we live a quite particular moment on a global scale, where some values somehow are kind of fading away, where there is less cooperation and more competition, where it's very, very strong, the materialistic matter, and so on. It becomes even more important to maintain in a way that it's solid, stable, some sane principles. When around us we see a lot of darkness, that's where we have to be watchful to stay in the light, because the only way to make it so that these principles, these values, and at the same time inside of Buddhism, this also transcends Buddhism, but inside Buddhism, this knowledge is able to remain and to pass from generation to generation, is that we put it into practice, that we know it, that we are able to participate to the sustainment of this. And these, as described by Pabonka Rinpoche, are the 6 awarenesses. I am the patient whose teaching is a doctor, Dharma is medicine. You get cured by putting into practice, that is taking the medicine. What teaches is that direct link that I have with all the masters of the lineage up to Buddha Shakyamuni, so I treat that person with such respect and awareness. And by listening the Dharma and putting it into practice, I make it so that this stays alive from generation to generation. And the other 2 awarenesses are, okay, I can get cured, and the process of healing is gradual. But okay, so I wanted to go through what we had seen before quickly, and to remember ourselves that these attitudes are not something that we need to understand. It's something that we have to, more than that, remember. It's not to understand just once, it's to regenerate and different times. So, for example, when Lama Ganchen had said different times, in the practice, actually, we were never really able to put it into practice, both when he was alive and today. But he said that when you come from from the center to here to the temple, the Shambhala, it should be like a way of silence. And as one is walking here, one starts to generate the motivation of what is coming here to do, this awareness. And when it steps in the Gompa to receive the teachings, is the time when you do the prostrations, you generate humility and you remember the awareness of why you are here. Not in a heavy way, but like in a joyous way, but profound, sincere. So this is part of this process of inducing ourselves to these attitudes, awarenesses that are important. The greatest danger on this is when we have come here for a long time, we have seen the Lama for many times, we have heard this 30,000 times. When there is this, there is something that in Tibetan is called Chotrik. Pabonka Rinpoche describes it at, I don't have an exact translation, but he describes it like a vessel of leather where butter is placed. And in Tibet, there used to be like, yeah, this leather vessel to contain the butter. So there are like these kind of bags. The first time that you put like butter at the beginning, the leather absorbs the fat. And once the butter has been placed there for many times and the leather has already absorbed the fat, then it becomes impermeable and it doesn't absorb it anymore. It is said that when we have listened many times or we have been there many times, there is a point where we become impermeable. And this is dangerous. Waterproof. Ideally, in another text of Pabonka Rinpoche, always of Lam Rim, it's as if when someone comes and speaks you of an object of anger, like for example, let's imagine a situation that makes us angry. You already know the situation, I don't tell you something new about it, but from the moment that I talk to you about that situation, the more I talk to you about that situation that you already know, are you indifferent or does the anger arise? It arises if I talk to you about an object of sadness. I don't give you any new information. The sadness increases. And similarly, when we say, may all the sentient beings have the happiness and its causes, even if we have heard that 20,000 times, ideally it should generate in us the wish that the beings will be at peace, happy, that would be free from suffering. When we say, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha until enlightenment, other than a word said in an automatic way, it should be something that moves our feelings. So it's very important to remain permeable to the teachings. And this is something that requires a certain effort. And one of the way to remain permeable is to generate the right attitude. Because at a certain point I go to the teachings. Why? Because I'm Buddhist. Not even that, maybe like, oh, maybe just a habit, or I have to do it, I like it, or if I don't go, then what will the others say? Everyone is going. No, obviously, no. I go because I want to face myself, I want to grow, I want to develop my qualities.
Tenpa dan che la rimdro keba, samba da jorwa citta bu shebas. Yul kan la sheba da mi shebe keba ros. Ok. Torniamo al testo.
We have completed the part that is about the right attitude when we go and listen. The next step is, in this context, is more related to me than you, which is the correct way of teaching, but it's important for us, mostly when we are in the phase, when we are trying to find someone to teach us. There are some aspects that is important to observe. So quickly, let's look at it together. The correct way of teaching the Dharma. There are 4 parts. The first is that we should reflect about the benefits of teaching Dharma, to show respect in relation to the Dharma and its teacher, what to think and do while teaching, and to discern between the people you should teach to and those you should not. The main point about the first characteristic necessary for who teaches the Dharma is that there needs to be sincerity and purity in the intention. This is fundamental. Ideally, there should be love. That is, if I am here to explain you something, it would be good for me if I would have interest on you. That is, I don't need to be here and have a monologue where I just talk for myself. I need to be here where I explain something according to your own necessities, not from what I want. I don't know if it has ever happened to you to go to a congress and to have like the feeling that maybe not all, but like most people just talk for themselves. They're there, no, I want to say this is what I have to say. I don't care so much about what you want to say. The people that are there, what do they need to hear? This is the most important thing. I had the luck of having a formation, because since when I was very young, like maybe 12, 13, Lama Ganchen brought me with him like 2 months per year around the world, and the rest of the time predominantly I was living in India, studying there. 2 months I would go to Brazil, Italy, traveling a bit around Asia, Europe, and so on. And he would bring me at the events where he was invited, where he had to teach in the Dharma centers, in the medicine conferences in Sri Lanka or whatever. He brought me with him. I remember, for example, in Sri Lanka there were more than 1800 people, a huge hall, and he was there. He was like the guest of honor, one of the most important ones. He would bring me with him, and he would say, there was his moment of talking, and he would say, now you talk. And what I have to say, what do you want? He never told me, no, you need to say that, say this, not say that. He never did that, so. And what I learned in that process was, for me, I don't really care so much about talking. I'm not here for myself. If I'm in front of you, then I look to find something that is of benefit for you. So what can I say that for you can make some sense? And this, for me, is one of the key points. When we are in the position of having to explain, it's not an act of superiority, it's an act of being at service of the other. So the basis to explain something well and to share something with the other is a respect, profound respect towards the other, to which we are going to transmit and share. Profound respect means that I see you for what you are inside of my possibilities, I adapt to your reality, and I try to share something that I believe can be of benefit for you, not as how I received it or as how I understand it, but as how I think you need it. Also the beginning of the teachings, when there is that moment that I say, this is a verse that is recited at the beginning of the teachings of Dharma. This is the very, very short version. But in essence, it says, in all the languages, I share here the Dharma. And for me, all the languages doesn't mean like the Italian, the English, the French, the Portuguese, the Tibetan. I mean, but to adapt to the mind and to the capacity and the necessity of each one. So it's a moment at the beginning where I remember that I'm here to serve, I'm here to adapt. So this is one of the first characteristics that we should remember. So when it's up to any of us to give some advice to someone, to explain something, let's always try to remember that who talks is at the service of who listens, not at the service of himself or herself.
Perciò questa è una prima caratteristica fondamentale.
So this is the first fundamental characteristics when we go about to teach the Dharma. The other characteristics that is important is to maintain a purity in the motivation. Why am I here? With total sincerity, it has happened to me that at the beginning, one of the things that of which I'm proud of, a step back first, that since when I was little, I've always had an attitude of observing myself, my mind, of observing what I'm doing, how I do it. That has always helped me a lot. I tell it to share because that is important. And one day I was giving teachings in Italy. I was driving hours and hours, going from one place to the other. Very often I would come here to sleep at 2 or 3 in the night after the journey. And one day I went to a small center, I gave the teachings, and the offer that they did wasn't enough, not even for the fuel and the highway. No, I didn't say anything. I've always had an attitude of offering, and what they offer me, it's okay, and that's it. But the point is that the day after I was going to a place where they usually made a nice offering, and somehow in some place I thought, today it's going to be more than just paying the fuel. And when I realized that, I looked at myself in the face and I told myself, what are you doing? Why are you here, honestly? These days my grandpa, that left the body a few years ago, many times tried to take me to work in the factory that he founded. One day he told me, no, but you like the technological things. Like with your aunt, there is a technological engineer. You can do something together. Let's create a company. I pay for it. And I said, look, Grandpa, it's not that I don't have respect towards what you do. It's not that I don't have interest in technology, but it's because I've decided to dedicate my life in some other way. And then I find myself playing tricks on myself. And so if I do what I do in order to earn some money, then it's better if I just do something else that at least I earn something better, that makes a difference in that sense. There was also a moment at the beginning of the center where the money was lacking there was a moment where I thought, okay, I can go away from Albagnano a couple of years. I started to work with the grandpa. I put away some money and we built the temple. And somehow I even thought about that, but it happened in some other ways then eventually. But anyway, in that moment I was able to look and see the danger that was there, and there I made an oath to myself that I'm proud to have kept up to now, and that is, okay, wherever I go, whatever happens, I will teach the Dharma, thinking about the benefit of who's there, without having to make an exchange. And that's also the reason for which I've always decided that the teachings here should be free. This is about the purity of not just who receives, but also of who gives, offers. I've already seen very difficult situations where there was like the person teaching the Dharma, they would start to count how many people were there to see how much money he had to receive. Very ugly. But this is something that Pabonka Rinpoche talks about here, because there are, how can I say, some traps where we can easily slip into. And when we are in the position of having to teach, One trap is the attachment to material things. Another trap is the attachment to image and power. And these are the main two traps. I've tried and I keep trying to be careful of traps. Sometimes I see them and I say, okay, no, you're not going to catch me. So this is, okay, when we talk about the characteristics of sharing something. And I've seen it also for many people when they have like a passion for maybe like a type of massage or Reiki or things that are a passion where I bring a benefit to the others. And I've seen people somehow lose that passion and to end up badly when they've tried to make that their job. So my advice is offer as a passion by maintaining pure the motivation. If that naturally grows to the point that in order to dedicate yourself you need to drop other things and so to make that your life, but don't try to quit the job, to quit everything in order to do that as a job, because the likelihood is that you will pollute it, and to maintain that balance is very difficult. It is just to share. So this is one of the important conditions when we go and share the Dharma.
Ovviamente è fondamentale da parte di chi insegna mostrare rispetto verso il proprio lignaggio.
Obviously, it's important to show respect to the lineage from where the person comes from and to the masters, and not to do as sometimes we can see where one starts to teach and at a certain point he himself is the most important thing and it's not relating to anyone else anymore. There is also an attitude where, okay, I was going to Tibet to receive teachings from a master. It was like 10 beautiful years. He was one of the greatest authorities on Buddhism in Tibet, so in the world in that moment, from the point of view of knowledge, philosophy, practice, tantra, really one of the most respected and important in Tibet. And I had the precious opportunity to be in his presence and to receive private teachings. And when I was just myself with him, I allowed myself to ask some questions, and sometimes I would ask, what does this mean? And he said, okay, no, Lam Rim Chen Mo said this, and the other master said that to answer the question. And I asked him, but what do you think? And he said, me? Me, nothing. And then when I would ask a question that there were no like text references of other masters, you would just say, yeah, well, who am I to say what I think? And when I insisted, sometimes he would say, okay, I think so, but don't take it for granted because I've said it. It's just my own thinking. And the attitude that I've seen around here, okay, is that he was a great person. He was a great scholar that studied a whole life, and at the other extreme is that I read 2 books and I write the third. I take a bit from here, a bit from there, I make like a soup of 4 things and I invent my own system. These things partly are dangerous because they lack deepness, profundity, and they lack experience, because one of the most important conditions in who transmits and the most difficult is that one shouldn't transmit what he didn't realize, either didn't realize or isn't putting into practice and as a minimum doesn't understand. But ideally is that one should share what he lives, what he or she practices and is. Because it is said that I cannot take someone where I'm not able to get to. And so for this personally, if someone tells me, asks me something that I don't know, my answer is I don't know. And as I see myself here with us here, it's like a way of saying in the land of the blind people where Zanai is a king. So I'm not here to say I'm here and you're there. No, let's work together. There is a mutual respect of the Dharma, which is fundamental. For this there is a throne, and here and there, to respect the spiritual path that we are doing. And so it's important that who gives the transmission has respect. Okay, how to think is to maintain correctly the motivation. So what we have said before, that we should teach thinking about the benefit of what we have in front. In other words, there should be love, humility, sincerity. How to act, and here is interesting because it says, before starting to teach, the teacher should wash and dress clean clothes. Then, sitting on a high throne, he should use with brilliancy analogies, quotation, and formal logic so that the meaning will be made clear. All the same, says Pabonka Rinpoche, I am very embarrassed and rather unhappy to be sitting on this high throne with high incarnate lamas are sitting below me. I also am embarrassed by sitting in front of you because I don't know also who I have in front. So the embarrassment is not from the point of view, because I'm here. No, it's the fact that it's not me. It's not my person. It's the Dharma that I bring in this moment. This is fundamental for us to have this clarity. Then naturally there exists a relationship of affection on a human level that is built, but what is the relationship of respect is towards the Dharma, not the person itself.
Poi ci sono diversi punti che vanno avanti.
Then there are different points that the master shouldn't neglect the difficult points, but it should go gradually and touch the difficult points in a way that is, how can we say, like to bring the light to see what usually we don't see. But for me the most important point in the transmission is to learn to see who's in front and to adapt to the other, and this is fundamental. So even when we find ourselves, each one of us, to having to give some advice, to explain something, share something, let's all try first of all to ask ourselves, what do I have in front? What is the best way that I can adapt to you? This is one of the fundamental points that are there in how to teach.
Poi ci sono piccoli, come si può dire, piccoli, grandi trucchi.
Then there are small, big tricks, like for example, one of the things that you do is that at the beginning of the teachings, okay, for example, like when we begin, we always start with the prayer where I ask for the blessings of my masters. And what we do is to imagine that the master comes and comes inside the crown and sits on the heart. So when we are in a position, as I find myself in this moment, where on a very practical level I'm sitting on a place with a certain importance and so on, the correct, an important tool is to visualize that at my heart there is my guru, that the praise goes to him and everything. And what I can offer goes through me, but it comes from there. So it comes from the lineage, it comes from what I received. An important point for me here that somehow we are opening it, and in the Lam Rim it gets into many details, but that for a long time in the Western culture, many masters have neglected it, in the sense that have kind of just not faced it. That is the attitude that we should have towards the spiritual guide. Why this? Because while in a context such as in Tibet, where this is normal, in the West, like when there is the master sitting on the throne, talking about the importance of the masters, it seems like I'm saying you should respect me. And so to not create this misunderstanding, to not generate a wrong interpretation, very often it hasn't been talked much about this part. And so, yes, I found myself here, but the feeling that I have and that I want to carry on is not that I'm sitting there and you're looking at me and I'm looking to you, but that we are all looking together towards the same direction, that we are giving hands to each other and that we are walking together. I don't believe that I'm in a place where I have already arrived to whatever and I'm here to save someone. No, absolutely not. I'm here to say I'm walking. I profoundly believe in the path that I'm doing, and what I believe is what I always want to share without hiding anything. And once we walk together, we go. And this is something that it's important and that I wanted to share from my side. And then this aspect on how to relate with the spiritual guide, this has always been important. And so for me, and so I share it with you.
Distinguere tra chi può ricevere l'insegnamento e chi non può.
To distinguish between who can receive the teachings and who can't. It's not that one can't receive the teaching because that person is bad and you can't, but because also since the Buddha teachings, it has been quoted in the monastic rules that you can't teach the Dharma and explain the Dharma to someone who has a starting attitude of opposition. So, for example, if someone comes to follow the teachings, he can't use weapons. Also in the ancient times, if you stepped into the temple, you had to leave the weapons outside. So the swords, the weapons in general, couldn't get into. You couldn't get into to listen to the teachings armed, because otherwise it's okay, you need to defend yourself and to attack, and it's not the moment for that. This was one of the attitudes that were there. And I remember once in the teachings of the Dalai Lama that was talking specifically about this point, and he had to say that there are the bodyguards around, and some of them were armed. But this is an exception. But the fact is that, okay, when we receive the teachings, we should have an attitude of openness and not to be there tense, lacking respect. And the other thing that it is said originally is that you shouldn't teach the Dharma to someone who's wearing the hat, because in our culture, when a person is wearing a hat, for example, at dinner, or you say hi to someone, do you take off the hat or not? Why do you take it off? You also I remove hats off, I remove the hat, because otherwise it's like I'm here, you're there, I have my position, there is an attitude of superiority somehow, if not of superiority, of competitiveness. And this is an attitude that doesn't allow a real sharing. To me, it has already happened to be in front of someone where in which I would see that there is not the openness to receive something. So if I don't see that there is openness, it's useless that I go and say something. So to be able to discern between who has the openness and who has not, it doesn't mean like this person is worthy and the other not, but that there are different contexts. For example, there are also some teachings that are beautiful, but if given in the wrong context, can bring wrong understandings. So if I find myself in front of people that I think don't have the basis to comprehend something, then I talk about something else for their own good. And so there exists also the capacity of who teaches to be careful of who's in front. So when he talks about here to be able to discern between who to teach to and who not, it's not about being worthy. It's about, are there the conditions of openness, of comprehension? Is there the basis for sharing this, or isn't there? And here, taking it to a more simpler life of daily life, it's not important what is being said, but how we say it and when we say it. The right thing in the wrong moment doesn't work. So it's this. To go and say some things to someone when that person hasn't the openness to receive it, to listen to it, doesn't work. And so it's the same thing happening with the transmission of the Dharma. So for example, it is said that you shouldn't teach something if it's not requested.
Questo è anche uno dei principi nel buddismo per il quale non c'è il proselitismo. Può essere con una conoscenza incredibile, se non c'è
So if there isn't any request, then there isn't enough openness. If you request, then you open. It is said that you shouldn't teach the first time also that it is requested. You should wait that the request comes at least 3 times. Why? It's a bit like what was happening in Tibet before. You went to a master and you asked, Master, can you give a transmission for this teaching? No. Okay. You go back 1 year later, not the day after. You wait a bit. To me it has happened that one of my masters of Tibet, I asked a specific teaching, I waited like 5 years. Each year I would ask again. You come back 1 year later, can you give me? No. You come back even 1 year again. Yes, we will see when. Then you come back 1 year, but you know that teaching that you told me, okay, yes, in 3 months, in 1 year. When we come there to receive those teachings, as it has happened to me, and waiting 5 years, you can't sleep during the teachings. Don't sleep. You don't think about something else. You're present there with your whole being, listening to welcome it and to make a treasure of what you're receiving. Only if you're really maybe sick. It has happened to me once that I was in Vietnam, different contexts, quite different, but it was an enormous Buddhist congress in Vietnam, but I had left from Brazil, and I was so tired with a terrible jet lag. In the morning, I was really heavy, I got a hard time to get up, and like these formal things of the Congress is not like my natural habitat. And so I was there, and there was Thich Nhat Hanh that was giving some teachings, and I said, wow, I like that. But it was at 8 in the morning, and I was like, okay, with the jet lag, I get there, all happy, a big auditorium, all full. And first of all, Thich Nhat Hanh comes in, doing walking meditation with the bell playing, singing at each step. With disciples behind him, walking slowly, slowly, until he comes to sit on its place. And before starting to talk, 15 minutes passed when I was fighting against sleep in a terrible way. Then he started to talk in a way that in my perception was like, monotone, very, very soft, and for me it was worse than a lullaby. And I fell asleep and I didn't manage to stay awake, and I did my best and really couldn't manage. And at a certain point I just let myself go. I even slept myself. I tried to wake myself up. And aside from these kind of things where I really cared, but between the jet lag and the context, the comfortable chair all together, it was difficult. But in general, when you wait for a long time, when you give a lot of value to that moment, you don't sleep. You are attentive, you give value, you're present, you're really there to make treasure of everything that you receive. And so what happens is that in the past, many masters knew this well. For example, Lama Rinpoche told that his master, Je Tsong Rinpoche, some mantras to learn them. He taught the mantra in about 3 years. At a certain point, he would give a piece of the mantra, not the entire mantra. Another time, he would give another small piece there. Another time, another small piece there. Until at a certain point, he gave the complete mantra. He don't forget it anymore. And you're like, okay, when will I receive the rest? You do it, you receive it. When we receive everything too easily, then at a certain point we don't give any value anymore. It's like the books of today. When the books were so difficult to obtain, you will read much more than today, even in the Tibetan context. There was a time in India where books weren't there so much, and in order to study the Dharma, the Lam Rim, for example, then you would go there and copy the book by hand. In those times, a person that had like a Tibetan book like this, they have this wonderful thing that the pages are not tied together. So you could read a book like this in five, with 5 people, each one taking a part and another one the other. But the fact is that you read at those times much more than today, that we have all these books and we read less. But in general, it's like that. When we have too much of something, we give less value. So for this, one of the right attitudes to teach the Dharma is not to give, to receive the Dharma is to not give it for granted, but be able to value it. And for this, you also shouldn't teach at the first request, only after the third one. And in Tibet, when I say that you will go back 1 year after, it was like 6 months of travel. And then you will go there, make offerings. You invested a lot in that. Another aspect that is important in the teachings, me for example, I never had to pay for a teaching, but I never received a teaching without having made an offering. Each time that I went, if there are teachings that last many days, at the beginning I make an offering, at the end you make an offering. Always I've asked to my masters to participate, and then I thanked. If it was individual teachings or group teachings, I will do the same thing. So my dream here with the center is that the teachings, we shouldn't pay for them because there isn't a price to establish, to define. But when we have benefit, when we receive a benefit, then we can offer to the center mainly, because if the center, then no one will be here. There isn't. We don't need to get into the details of the last light bill, because in order to get the hair warm and everything, what happens is that in order to keep all of this together, there are necessary resources. Once in Tibet you had the kings, now there is each one of us. So my wish is that everyone can offer what is right, and what is right is what is not too much or too little for each one, to sustain the whole. And so what I receive, I never go empty-handed, I offer something. And this is part for me of a process of what is transcribed in the texts since the ancient times, that is the right attitude. That is, who teaches shouldn't try to make money out of it. And it's a fight that I've always had with the center, and I try to keep always my solid position. I won't go and choose the Dharma activities on the basis of how much money can come in. For example, at the Kumpel Lama in Milan, there was a time, different years ago, like as many other times, was a person that I really loved with a commercial mind, and it was like, let's organize courses of tantric sex. You earn well with that. Well, first of all, this is totally out of our tradition. There is not this reality there. So I can't like put like a course in our center that has nothing to do with what we are. Without getting into the judgment if I agree or not, because honestly I don't even know so much what are these courses about. I didn't even want to get into the details because it's like, this is not our reality. But I cannot want to adapt and structure the teachings on the basis of having to want to make money out of it, because I ruin the motivation that is at the basis of it. No, let's do the initiation because so we earn well. No. We do what we think is the best for who can come. If there are more people that need more like a certain type of practice, we do something. There are people who need other kind of teachings, we do something else. We try to adapt to the reality of who's there. And I take advantage to get into this. It's possible only in a collective thing. In Tibetan, you use the example of lifting a heavy table. You need at least 4 people. And so, what happens is that in order to be able to maintain this relationship not in a polluted way, then we should all make the effort, and we're already doing it, but I ask everyone to have this awareness, and I open and close a final point on this. For me, the main point for the teachings to be free is not the fact of the teachings themselves, free or not, is not an economical matter. It's a change of paradigm. We come from a vision, a culture where we're used to pay for what we receive, and we go here from the weight of having to pay for what I receive to the honor of being able to offer something to the others, going from the weight to the joy. There are 2 things completely different. Because when I pay for something, it's a relationship like of something that I take for myself. When I offer to the others, it's something that expands, and it's totally different dynamics. So it's what we were talking about before. What we do is often not like what we do, but how we do it. So I can spend the same money. Like my master in India once, Je Tsong Khapa, of which I've talked many times, at a certain point he had a tumor, the esophagus. Anyway, he was very sick. He had with him all this money, it was like 1,500 euro, and he had to go through the treatment that costed about that. And another master calls me, Pabonka Rinpoche, and says, look Lama, Je Tsong Khapa needs to have this medical treatment, it costs this much, do you want to help him? Absolutely yes, for me it's possible to offer these thing for him. And after I said it, then he said, no, actually he has this specific money, but he actually, for him, it would be good to be able to offer that money at the monastery, and for you, it would be good to offer that money to your master. And so everybody wins, and I was very happy to be able to sustain him, and he was very happy to give everything that he had to something that he believed in, instead of just directing it towards himself. So the force of offering is stronger than the force of buying, of taking, and I close the parenthesis on this. But it's important to remember in our way of dealing with the teachings, and so to whom to teach and to whom not to teach. You don't teach where those teachings go and decrease the Dharma, where you don't see that there are the conditions to really receive. So when we really want something, it's important, it's good, to ask again, to wait, because that process of waiting, of asking, of conquest, of seduction is what gives value. And when we give value to something, we give much more value to it later. And this is something that personally I have to learn more on. Once I was kind of scolded by my masters, because he said one of the best ways to teach is when you don't give already everything that is chewed. You should give some mystery around, like something that you have to search. If you give everything like that, then maybe you don't give value. In my tendency, I've always thought I try to explain in the way that it's the most comprehensible. But I see that sometimes you need to leave something there to give that seduction and conquest process, which is also important. Because if I give you a very clear concept, you receive it, okay, understood. But if you, for that same concept, you have to make some effort, you have to look for, and then eventually you get there, what is that remains more? The second one. So even this is important. And lastly, here we have the way to conclude the teachings from the side of the master and the disciple. What is about concluding the teachings is that, okay, when you start, you should generate the motivation together. When you end, you should make the dedications. The dedications that are quoted here in the book of Pabonka Rinpoche are those that we have recited yesterday, that we would also recite today, exactly the same text that is treated here and explained in the text of Pabonka Rinpoche. And here it is also said the mode with which we should get into the Gompa, in the place where the teachings are given, and the mode with which we should get out. So when we go and receive the teachings, in order to help us to generate the correct awareness attitude, we should get there early, because when we go towards something that is important for us, we don't want to get late, because it's important for us. Imagine maybe like a musical show that you have waited for 3 years. Maybe you leave earlier, you don't want to get there late. So there is an attitude of saying, I get there earlier, so you should get there before the teacher, and once it ends, then usually the master gets out before, and one goes out calmly, like with how bad that it happened, how beautiful it was, with a kind of wish to stay more, without the hurry, okay, they finished, let's go. And mostly for me, the main point is that when it ends, to try to do with calmness, to give some space to elaborate and to absorb what we have received. And me personally, what I've always done with the teachings of Dharma that I've received in the period of study and so on, that is the original reason for which I've put the videos on YouTube is that I recorded the teachings before you had like cassettes, then the CD. I will record the teachings, I would write them down. When the teachings finished, I would replay them at home. I will go through the points again and transcribed. I've done this for years. And when I started to teach here, I was like, okay, this is the way that I learned. And I would like to give the opportunity to others to do something like that. And at the beginning, there will be like 8 recorders on the table. And so I said, let's make it simpler, like just make one recording that is well done and to make it accessible to everyone. So that's where YouTube starts from. It also had other functions, but it's important for us that after having had a direct contact to be able to go through it again, to mark the important points, in order to allow ourselves to slowly assimilate, because the process of listening doesn't end just with listening. There needs to be the process of comprehension and then the familiarization. So when we arrive, we prepare to arrive, and in the same way that we say, okay, the master should wash himself, dress some nice clothes, because it's an important thing what we're doing. Even ourselves, when we are going to receive the teachings, I want to say that we should dress like with a dress code, that it's someone sometimes has said, oh, that person has like a mini skirt. What is the problem? I mean, you have to look here anyway. So the problem is not who wears the mini skirt, but who can't keep the eye where it should. So what happens is that when we dress up, then we prepare for something. So even if there isn't like a rule about how one should or not get dressed, one gets dressed in a way to do what is important for oneself, to try to be clean. This is already part of our culture. In Tibet, it was different. Maybe you will wash yourself once a year. An anecdote about Lama, just to laugh a bit. He was this Lama living in Milan, wonderful. One day he was telling me, he came back from a journey in Tibet. And I was in Demagonsa, like 5,000 meters. I met this man, he was like 85 years old. He told me that in his whole life he had only one shower. And it's not many years before that. And it was like, a few years ago, my nephew, that he was in the city, she insisted that to wash oneself was important. And so she convinced me. I went to the city, she took me to a hotel room where there was like the shower with the warm water, and I took the shower, and I had such a pain in my belly, I will never do it again. But they're living at 5,000 meters, so there are also less bacteria. But the point is that to wash oneself is part of our culture now. So in Tibet, also the deep cleaning of the gompa, you will do it like once every 12 years. And the pillows, they will be stacked one on top of the other. At this kind of height, like alpha meter. And when you offer the tea, like butter tea, it would be spilled a lot on the ground, and someone will come there and throw sand. And so the cleaning every 12 years will be like with knives to take away really like all the crust. Today it has really changed a lot, but So the main point is not to be clean or dirty. The main point is to generate respect, to prepare for something that it's important for me.
E quando finisce, non aver la fretta di uscire.
And when it ends, to not have the hurry to get out, but to have the moment to elaborate, to assimilate what we have received.
Con questo
And with this, this first part of the Lam Rim ends. That is about how to listen. And after this, we get into another different part, which is, by all effects, how to follow the path. The first point that we will see now, and which we will not get into all the details, it's first of all about how to relate with the spiritual guide, and once having done that, how to follow the path. What is the path to follow? The path then is also divided in three parts, which is like the lower scope, the middle scope, and the higher scope. The lower scope is having a vision that transcends this life. So to be able to live this life beyond the comfortable survival. Having a vision that transcends just the selfishness, which is, so this is like small but not so small. This is the first step anyway. The next step is to transcend the idea of the external materialistic existence as a solution, but to see that we have to do a profound inner change and to get out of the cycle of suffering that is the samsara, and to get out of ignorance, selfishness. This is the second step. The higher purpose, scope, is to go beyond our own selfishness, to expand the love towards the others, to develop a profound attitude of altruism. This is the third step. And all the path is divided into these three steps, which we will see slowly. Inside of this there is a karma, the law of karma, the part of recognizing which are the mental defilements, the root mental defilements, and secondary. There is like a world of details here, and we will get into that slowly. But to have a general view, the first step is to transcend this life, and here it's about the recognizing the preciousness of this life, to develop awareness of our own mortality. These are two fundamental points that are at the beginning of the path. That it's not about having fear of death, but to not live life as if death didn't exist, because we have a unique opportunity. This we will see it later. And the goal, among others, is to generate an inner attitude that when one wakes up in the morning says, wow, what a luck that I'm here, what a beautiful opportunity that I have, I don't want to lose it with stupid things. Geshe Yeshe was making an example. It was one of the masters of Lama Ganchen, from which I also had the opportunity to receive teachings from. It was one of the most important contemporary masters in the Gelugpa tradition, and there is a teaching where he was talking about the preciousness of life, and he made this example. Let's imagine what would happen if someone comes to you and gives you and he borrows you a machine to print the money. Everything legal, without taxes. You print the money how you want. You choose the bills that you want to print. Maybe like 100, because the 200 and 500 are not anymore there. Like, if you have the machine in your hands, which one do you choose? I don't know, I leave it to you. But what do we do if someone comes to us and gives you the machine with one condition? Okay, it's all legal, you can print as much as you want, but the day that I say give it back to me, then you have to do it immediately, and I will never tell you when it is. What do we do with the machine? Do we put it in the basement? Do we leave it there? No, because today I can't. Today I'm busy. You know, there is the last episode of the series that I'm watching. I can't sit there now and, you know, I have to speak with that person, I need to do this and that, I can't. Do we do like that? No, we put there in the living room, close to the kitchen and the bathroom, so that we can print 24/7. We cancel everything else that we have to do, because I don't know for how long I can keep that machine. Geshe Yeshe was saying, this life that we have, it's like that machine. And it's not ours, it has been lended to us by the Lord of Death. Death, we represent it like as a personification, like the Lord of Death. Death has lended this life to us, because the moment that Death says, give it back to me, I say, no, wait a second, the last few banknotes. No, when Death says, let's go, it means, let's go. No, I'm young. If I go in front of Death and I say, no, I'm young, what will Death say? There is even who dies before being born. What does it mean? Is that like a reason to not die? But I'm a good person. I am good, really. And since when good people don't die? Pabonka Rinpoche in the Lam Rim? Now I got confused. I think it's from Pabonka Rinpoche. He says, even the great masters of the past that have realized beautiful things, they have died. Buddha Shakyamuni himself, Lama Tsong Khapa, he also died quite young. Why wouldn't I? So this life is being lended, and at the moment that Death says, give it back to me, we must give it back to me. But instead of printing money, what is it about? It's about transforming our being in a way that it's positive, that allows us to sustain more and more a state of well-being and balance. There is nothing more precious than that. If we are able to use the conditions that we have well, we are able to cultivate love, patience, stability, gratitude, joy, peace, at a level that is gross, subtle, and very subtle, with imprints that are taken from life to life. Because there are three fundamental conditions that make this life worthy and precious. There is the minimum to have the minimum necessary for survival, because when that is lacking, then that becomes priority. So when food is lacking, our head is talking about that, is thinking about that. So the first condition is that. Then the second condition is to have who guides us correctly. And the third condition is to want to walk. And for as much it can seem, if we look at the world around us, the majority of people, do they have the necessary to survive? In our social context, yes, but if we broaden our view on this planet, one of the other conditions that is part of this is to live in a safe context. Because if I am afraid that a bomb drops in my head, one day or the other, try to meditate. You can't. And so we have conditions that are not so obvious. And at the same time, among those who have these material conditions, minimal, assured, how many of those have someone who guides them through a sincere spiritual path aside from the religion? Because also inside of many religions, also in Buddhism, it is lived like a spiritual tool to get mundane goals. But it's not easy to find someone who guides us by putting emphasis and focus on the development of peace, of balance, of satisfaction, of love, and so on, in a true path of inner growth aside from the religion. And among all the people, to really have the wish to walk and to grow spiritually and to go beyond life, just the survival, but to be really like developing among the people that we know was these three conditions, is the majority or the minority. And why is it special to have these conditions? Because it allows us to take care of what continues from life to life, and even inside of this life, and to develop what allows ourselves to get to a state of peace and joy. And so the first step that I've now anticipated, but then we will get into the details, is to give value to the opportunity that we have, because our tendency, not just of today, but from forever, it's to get lost in the daily life. Atisha in the 11th century, he said, during the day we are distracted, during the night we are sleeping, and we are going to die soon. And I've always thought when I read this sentence, what would Atisha say here in the 2025? Because it's not a joke. But also not just here in 2025, also in Tibet. It's a disaster. I think, okay, in the 11th century in Tibet, what this kind of distraction had people? Maybe the cow of the neighbor, I don't know, some kind of distraction must have been there, but it's definitely very little compared to now. And so we have a special opportunity, let's try to not neglect it. So I invite you in this time to reflect, and to reflect mostly on the dream, and to remember what we have started today, that exercise that allow ourselves to dream, to repeat that exercise from time to time, to be able to come back to ask ourselves really what I want, really what is important for me, what are my priorities, without getting away anything from family, health, from the job, from the economical stability, friends. Well, everything is fine, but even also because when one looks for the spiritual path, running away from normal life is a disaster. All those that I've seen, for example, going to the monastery because they wouldn't work well in daily life, it went terribly wrong. And I have many examples. But when one is working well in life and wants to put energy into something else, then it comes out completely different. And so I don't invite you to quit your life, so the job, the family, and so on. What we have to do, what I invite you to do, is to revisit the way that we live it. It's not what I do, it's how I do it. With what awareness, with what priority. For example, one of the important priorities is who do I become, not what I do. I become what I do. That is, the more I get angry, the more I will get angry. The more I'm patient, the more I will become patient. And so on. And so when I'm in the traffic, for example, traffic jam, I've already thought, okay, Thursday this week I have to be in Bergamo. I don't know how many times You have gone through the Tangenziale, going through Milan, direction Venezia, Venice. It's a disaster. The ring road. Wonderful opportunity to practice patience and also the effort to wake up earlier and to predict to leave a bit early. But the point is not to be in the traffic or not, it's not to get there on time or not. The point is, what do I cultivate inside of me in front of that experience that I'm living? How do I react? How do I live what I live? I have a boring job. I do things at my job that I don't connect with the thing by itself. I need to interact with people. Wonderful, I have opportunity to manifest awareness, love, respect, to be able to see the other, to develop constancy. Me, for example, I really like monotonous jobs. Like, for example, when I had to do the Tibetan calendar with the math calculations, I did the calculations for the solar and lunar eclipses. And there is like an infinite table of numbers, and I spent entire days writing down numbers, and I really liked it. Because one doesn't think about anything else than just putting the numbers in, so the mind relaxes. So at least for me it was like that. So it's an opportunity, like I sit there, I calm the mind. How beautiful. So the key often is not what we do, but how we do it. For example, in a previous life of Lama Rinpoche, that was called Dharikapa, he was a king. One day, he decided to follow the Dharma together with his minister. Lama told that it was my previous life. And at a certain point, the guru come and they follow this master. When we today do the Mandala offering with the representation of the body and the speech and mind, it's a representation. Once was really like that. So once you would offer yourself in the hands of the guru, and you will become maybe like a sort of voluntary slave, in the sense I offer myself to you, and what you tell me I do. And at a certain point, this Mahasiddha sold them. So the king, he sold them to a house of prostitution, and his role was to clean the feet of the women and to clean the places. So what he did is that he was working during the day, and in the night he was meditating, and his minister was sold to a family, and his job was to wash the rice, and their job was to put into practice the teachings that they had received in that field. And from what it's told, both of them managed to do it. And we have all of them represented there, where we have the two windows. In the middle there are two paintings. In one there is Nagarjuna, in the other there is Dharikapa. And then on the other side we have, between the two windows, there is Atisha and Lam Rim Chen Mo, the aspect of Mahasiddha and the tiger. And then around there are other different characters. Those characters are the 84 Mahasiddha. Maha means big, and Siddha means realized being. Siddha is one who has the realization. And they are people who have had like a life quite ordinary on an external level, but that adapted the spiritual path to what they did, and they managed to reach that state of peace and wisdom, of balance, in a life that was apparently ordinary. And Lama Ganchen really cared a lot about this image and the life about the 84 Mahasiddha, because he said just this: we're not in a context where everyone should quit his life to go and live in God knows what monastery. I have a lot of gratitude for the years that I've spent in a monastery in India to study, and it was wonderful experiences. But it's not the solution for everyone. The real solution for us is to take the Dharma, receive, and to make treasure of what we receive and to apply it in our daily life, in each context, in each place where there is no more distinction, I'm practicing or not practicing. Because where is it that we can practice Dharma? Wherever we are. Where is it that I can look at myself in my face and face my shadows? Wherever. Where is it that I can practice generosity, morality, and so on? Everywhere. And so the main gym to train in Dharma is not the temple. For how beautiful it is to come here and be together and share Dharma, that it's beautiful. The main place where to practice the Lam Rim is in the couple, in the family, it's with the children, it's with the job, it's in the relationships and in the daily life. Then the formal meditation is very important, but it's not enough. We need to apply it in the daily life. And so I invite you to reflect on that dream that we have talked about, to make some advertisement to yourself, to think about the dream and to ask yourself, do I really want it or not? And to allow yourselves gradually to fall in love with inner peace. This is the most important. When we fall in love with inner peace, really, then at that point, that becomes priority. At that point, we tell ourselves, I don't have any more time to waste with jealousy. I don't have time to waste with rancor, with hatred, anger, because it depends on me to have this kind of emotions. It doesn't depend on the other. And I can't anymore because it's not my priority. But this first step that we have seen in the Lam Rim these 2 days as an introduction is mostly to develop a connection with the map because we want to go to that place. And so to cultivate the dream, to give value to the tool that makes this dream a reality. And I repeat what I've said before. Sincerely, I have a profound trust that we can all do it. An analogy comes to me of something that I'm living these days. I put in my mind to go to the Kailash. Also, we have to conclude now because in half an hour there is the meeting to talk about the journey. The problem of going to the Kailash is that it's 3 days of walking where the starting elevation is 4,600 and you get up to 5,600. And the first day is 14 kilometers. The second day is 18 kilometers with a difference of elevation of more than 600 meters, going to 5,600. And all those that I've talked with up to now, that I've taken this trip, have said, I was sure that I would have died. Then they all managed. All of those that I've talked with managed to. Then. But there isn't a single one that said, no, it was a nice walk, a bit difficult. From those that was like really prepared and not prepared, Tibetan, Italian, was a friend of ours, Tonla, was born in Tibet. His wife said, no, you should never go there, you won't make it. I did it once, but... And so you have this strange feeling of saying, it's a difficult journey. The third journey is a bit easier, the second, in total it's 52 kilometers walking. But I have this strange feeling of saying, I've trust that I can do it, and I've trust that more or less we can all do it. I say more or less because one that is already starting living with heart problems and pressure problems and all of this, you don't go and walk 50 kilometers at that elevation. But it's this think that okay, that there is a path in front of you, that it's not simple, but you can do it. But in order to do it, you need to get involved into it. And for me, for example, in front of this goal that I've set myself, that is okay. The biggest problem is that I have to exercise, and I've refused my whole life to do it. But now I have that's also the excuse, for me to go, because I need to do it, But what happens is that, okay, we have to set the goal to ourselves and to say, we can do it. And I believe that we can all do it. And actually, I believe more about Dharma than going to the Kailash, in the sense that here, to go to the Kailash, you have physical limitations that are not irrelevant. For some people, if there isn't a certain level of preparation, maybe you can do it further on. But with the Dharma, we can all do it gradually, with time, without having to get there first. But I really have trust that we can do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Absolutely. I wouldn't be here taking this text. I wouldn't be here facing these arguments if I honestly didn't have the total, complete trust that we can do it. So for this, I ask you to reflect a bit in the spirit until the next time that we will see each other, to continue with these teachings, to reflect on the dream, to allow ourselves to dream for ourselves and the others, to revisit which are our priorities, to connect with the history of the various masters that brought these teachings to us, to understand a bit better what is it about, and to focus on the attitudes to listen to the Dharma. Now we make our dedications. We put on the projector for the final prayers. And then, as the prayers end, because the tradition also, all are welcome to say hello quickly, to offer the kata, and also to explain a bit when we greet in the Tibetan tradition. Then there are usually two modes. One is where the master puts the hand on the head, and the meaning is from the hand, the meridian that connects to the heart comes out, which is related to the heart, and in the head is the central channel which connects to the heart, and so it's mind to mind. And it's the same also when you touch head to head. In Tibet, for example, the masters, the greeting head to head, you do it only between masters. This is something that personally, many of my masters, when I went to say hi to them, they put the hand on my head, and this greeting head to head is of profound respect to one to the other, and it's something, like quite of equality, something that happens like that. And the meaning is that in our forehead, where the center channel is, then it's like the central channel touching with the central channel. In other words, my very subtle mind, my being in its very subtle essence, touches with yours. This is the meaning. So after having made the dedications, we will have this moment to say hello quickly, and then those who have booked and have the intention to take this journey in Tibet and also to the Kailash, then we will meet upstairs at the Taragompa. We thank for the teachings with the Mandala offering.
Drogu namda shingla che par sho Je Tsong Lame kutse raptenchi nam karatin le chokchur ge pada lo san tempe dremes drove munsel takto ne gyur che ye dam guru ratna mindra kam niryata yami. kewa kuntu yanda lama dan drame cheki pela longchechi sadan lamge yunte dorje change kopa nyur tobo shon.
Questa preghiera di dedica
This prayer of dedication has been written by Lama Tsong Khapa, and traditionally it's always recited at the end of the teachings of the Lam Rim.
Katara yangpa kanshe sakpa te lomi mare git drowa nama namre dagyur che terma songwe tsera kuntu yang jambe yangi tsewe jesung tempe rimba kunsa lamge cho nyene drupe gyalna nyeche sho range chishin tokpe lamge ne shukra tsewe changpe tapke ki drowe yigi mumba selche ne gyawe tempa yurin zingyur chi tempa rinchen chogi ma kyapam kyapkyan nyambra gyurpe chokterni nyingche chembo yirav kyopa ye pende terde selwara chebar sho seche gyawe mechon chinglele chancho lamge rimbe kyang tarde namge yila peltere shing gyawe zeba ringto kyongyur che lamsan drube tungen drubche ching galken selche mida miming kun tsera kunto gyalwe ngakpa ye namda lamdan dralwar magyur che kanse tekpa chola che chu chu tsulshin drubla tsumba te tse tude namge takso trokche ching trashi gyatso chukun kyab kyur chi Nimo dele tsendele, nime kuyan delek shin, ninsen takto delek pe, kuncho sumke chingilo, kuncho sumke ngodrubot sol, kuncho sumke trashisho. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Chen kepe
Ripetete dopo di me.
Repeat after me.
Je Lam Tudro. Lam la Parche. Myom Rasho. Possa la mente diventare il Dharma.
May the mind become the Dharma.
Possa il Dharma diventare.
May the Dharma become the path.
Possa il sentiero.
May the path be free from interferences.
May the mind become the Dharma. May the Dharma become the path. May the path be free from interferences. Grazie a tutti.
Thank you, everyone. I remember you that tomorrow morning at 8:30 I will be here again in Gompa, and also Wednesday at Milan, Thursday in Bergamo. Okay.